In this video, we're going through our first impressions of the Sony A9, as well as looking at some test shots. Coming up. Hey, what's up guys, Sean here.
Omar here.
And this is Think Media, bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. And on this channel, we do a lot of tips and strategy videos, as well as tech gear reviews just like this one. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. And hey, at any point during the video, check out show notes and links in the description below. We'll list out the A9, the lenses, and any other gear that we used, and just summarize everything in the YouTube description. Let's jump into the video. So I was super pumped to have Omar join me for this kind of first impressions talk about the Sony A9. Omar is a freelance photo and video shooter, and he actually helps out with a lot of stuff here at Think Media. So I'm pumped to have you on the show, man. How's it going?
Super pumped. It's good. Things are going good.
Awesome. And so Sony a while back sent us out an A9 just to borrow, as well as a G Master 70-200. And Omar's been in the field using the camera. And so I'm excited to kind of pick his brain about his first impressions, talk through some of the specs, and to see, if it's maybe something that you would want to invest in if you're doing the research about the A9. So the first thing is just kind of an overview. The A9 from Sony is Sony's attempt at a pro camera offering for the market. It really is kind of going against the Canon 1DX Mark II or the Nikon D5. And the price point on this camera is $4,500. So that seems like a high price tag, but that's actually 15 to 2 grand cheaper than the Canon 1DX Mark II or the Nikon D5. And when you stack them up feature for feature, the Sony has a lot to offer. So Omar, with some of your first impressions, what are some of the initial things you noticed and maybe who this camera is for?
Yeah, I mean, when the camera came in, I shoot with the Sony A7R Mark II. And the first thing is when you grab it, the body is a little bit more beefier. That was an initial first impression. And I was kind of looking for the things that my R2 didn't already have. And the different buttons and dials that you have, that I had to make my custom buttons on my R2 that are there readily accessible. And then also the menu system, you can custom. That was the first, one of the first things when I turned it on. I go to the menu and I saw that you could customize a menu and do as many as you can, but the things that you try to find in a menu that you can actually just put in one page. I was like, dude, that right there is a huge leap. But I found that more or less this is a pro level camera in the sense of, I think the price point, they say that, $4,500 is a gnarly price for somebody getting into photography, but definitely the person who's getting paid to do some photo work, so.
That's a good point. So we wrote down, it definitely would be for sports for sure. I think wildlife, if you wanted to shoot, and we'll talk about some of the specs, one of the big things is 20 frames per second photos. No other camera comes close to that. And so definitely wildlife. I think even weddings, maybe not as much portraits. You could use it, of course, for portraits.
Yeah, for sure.
But portraits, you can stage a person and you could reshoot the frame. But on a thing like weddings or sports, the moment's only going to happen once and then it's gone. So having the performance of a pro camera is huge. Journalism, even fashion, right? A lot of people will use a 1DX Mark II in a studio setting, shooting a model, and they want those high frame rates with a really big, full frame quality image. So I think those kind of scenarios. And then interesting for journalism is how quiet it is. Talk about the fact that it's just silent. It's really, I think, the first fully electronic camera.
Yeah.
So really nothing mechanical is happening there. So not only can you do 20 frames a second, but it's dead silent, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't make a single noise. I found that you had to put it on electronic shutter to access that 20 frames per second in silent mode, which is something no Sony camera could do. I shot a wedding with my R2 and I can only take one shot at a time. So me trying to capture a moment and not trying to, make the sound of the camera go off, I had to go like this. But with this, it's just it's almost like nothing's even happening, but it's taking 20 images and it doesn't go black So it's almost like you're just watching something live, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I just took 20 pictures that last second that just passed by. Oh, I just did it again. And so it is pretty wild in that sense. And I find myself using the silent mode for shooting in many different settings. Like I also shoot at church, and so when it's, you know, somebody's speaking on stage, and so it's really helpful because you're not making people turn heads because the sound's not going off. And so the silent mode is definitely something to rave about, I think.
That's super cool. So right now we can actually pull up some test shots, and one of the cool things that Omar was able to get test shots from was actually these surfing shots. Omar, explain what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to really do is like something I knew my R2 couldn't do, and I knew, you know, I even held it side by side and tried to like test the fire shoot the continuous, and it's so much slower. The R2 is like while this is like you know, and so I wanted to do something, you know, that I know I couldn't do with my other camera, and so I took it out to Huntington Beach to shoot some surfers. And I find that, like, talked with my friend David, we were shooting, he had actually a 1DX, a Mark 1, and you know, it just was incredible. I was using the 70-200 G Master lens. It was a 2.8, and then on top of that, I was shooting cropped in because I was standing on the pier, and it was just ridiculous. Like the thing I love about this camera, and I mean Sony in general, is the continuous autofocus, and you can just see, you know, the green squares follow the surfer, and I thought that the water mixed with the surfer, it would kind of confuse the camera, but once you locked it onto a person, it just followed them the whole way. And you can see in the example that, like, it's crystal clear, sharp. And you know, I was showing pictures of this to my friends, and we went to a trip, and people were just blown away at how sharp for how far I was. It's kind of like funny how far I was, but yet how sharp those images were. And just being able to track those people and get that 20 frames per second to catch that, you know, it was the first time I ever shot surf, and you want to catch that moment when they're like hitting a wave and turning their board. It kind of produces like this epic look. And so in order to get that, you can't just guess when it's going to happen. You kind of just have to track the person and shoot while they're going. And sometimes the wave hits it, and then boom, they do it, and then you get that shot.
That's awesome. So we can kind of go through some of the specs here, and Omar actually has a video over on his channel talking more about the A9, so we'll link that up in the description. We'll put it on the YouTube card. We'll talk more about that later. But just kind of like some of the overview of the specs, you know, in our first impressions. You have a stack full frame backlight illuminated sensor at 24 megapixels, which is awesome. You also have an incredible EVF and the screen. So the EVF is one of the best EVFs on the market with how bright, how good the colors are.
Crystal clear.
Crystal clear. Same thing on the back LCD screen. Of course, 20 frames per second in JPEG, RAW, uncompressed, and it's silent. And we actually did another video about this camera from NAB, but that means it's 20 frames a second, and every frame could be autofocus and auto exposure, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's unlike any other camera. Like, nothing is coming close. A lot of times, even some of the cameras that do maybe 14 frames a second are not giving you unique autofocus every shot or unique exposure every shot. So that's pretty crazy. And that's also called, so like, blackout free, silent, and also vibration free, because nothing mechanical is happening. There's no micro vibrations happening in the camera. So it just helps for everything to be a lot sharper.
And that really unlocks the ability to use it in lower light settings. So like, now you're getting more out of your lens. Like when 1.4 you felt like wasn't enough in this light, you know, situation, it now is, because the image stabilization and the vibration free in the camera. It's just it actually unlocks more than what you have, which is cool.
And then the shutter speed goes up to 1/32,000th, and so I'm not sure how fast that actually is, but that makes me think you could take a photo of like a bullet traveling or something, because that's such a fast shutter speed. So definitely tack sharp, you know, motion. That's a really high shutter speed. 693 autofocus points. And we read some reviews of some pro photographers over on Amazon, and actually they're worth reading. We'll link to them in the description below. Some people that are using them for some stuff. One of the things they mentioned about loving it was that it is, you know, it has a good build quality, it feels good in your hand,
sure,
but still it's also much more smaller and more portable than, say, like the Nikon D5 or the 1DX. Those are bulkier cameras. And so they mentioned that if you're hauling it in someplace, it's nice to have that. And that 693 autofocus points is almost to it's 93% coverage of the sensor and the autofocus. So composing your shot with tack sharp autofocus is just, it's like historic, right? As far as a feature.
Yeah.
New battery, like a little longer battery life,
Yeah.
and that's usually a complaint for a lot of Sony users. So
Yeah, I shot like almost all day at the beach, and then we went to, after Huntington, we went to Manhattan Beach, and yeah, I still had so much on my battery. I think I was at like 20% at the end of the day, and I shot about 2,000 images that day, and so huge leaps from their past cameras for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's called the Z battery. And then we've also been doing a little bit of test footage just with the 4K video here, and we could show some of those clips. But the cool thing about the 4K is it has actually full sensor readout from 6K. And what that means is some cameras technically, even if they say they can do 4K video, what they'll include is they'll do line skipping and pixel binning, which means that to save processing power in doing 4K video, every few lines will be the only parts of the sensor that the camera will use to produce 4K. Which means you're skipping lines, you're just not getting that full rich image. And then pixel binning is where it'll just group pixels together. So instead of maybe every detail of the color of the line of the shirt, it'll kind of blur it together generally. And for the most human eyes, that might look all right. But when looking at the 4K in this, and even some of the test footage on YouTube, it's just insane. Like you're getting close to you feel like what you're seeing what the human eye would see, or even better. It's so sharp. It's so the colors reproduce accurately. And so when you get a full sensor readout of 4K, the 4K image is just absolutely pristine. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, I think I think Sony's attempt to, maybe they're gonna produce like a video version of this camera, like they did with the S and the R. But I think you can do so much video with this camera. Most filmmakers are bummed because it doesn't have the S-Log features. But I think you can still adjust so much color nonetheless with LUTs and color correction. Like, I know shooting flat profiles is not an everybody's type thing, but this is definitely a killer camera for video too, for sure.
That's a good point. Yeah, when you look at even like the GH5, which obviously the sensors can't compare, but some people want that uncompressed ability to capture, or they want like 10-bit, 422, or all these other things. It doesn't really bring to the table all those features, but if you want to just do video production, I think more like we do, it's less like indie filmmaker work, but you want crispy footage,
for sure.
Even for YouTube videos or like a small business or something. I think it's definitely a major player for video, depending on what features you're actually looking for. And then because of that full sensor readout, that really helps with rolling shutter. So rolling shutter almost becomes a non-issue. So no rolling shutter with full sensor readout 4K plus the 5-axis in-body image stabilization makes this the product you get a video right out of the camera, even if you're shooting handheld, really, really impressive.
For sure.
So again, we just wanted to share a few test shots and a few first impressions about the camera. If you actually want to see Omar's full video, breaking it down and really also comparing it to his daily shooter, the A7R II, you can head over to his channel. We'll link it up on the YouTube card as well as in the description below. Question of the day, what do you think about the A9? And for pro shooters, how do you think it stacks up against a 1DX or against the Nikon D5? Where do you think it sits in the market? Do you think that at the better value price it's a real contender, or do you think that it doesn't quite live up to the hype? Let us know in the comment section. So thanks for checking out this video. Subscribe for more videos just like this. If you want to check out another video on Think Media, click here. If you want to check out Omar's video about the Sony A9, you can click here. Links in the description as well. Until next time, Think Media is bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. Keep crushing it, and we will talk soon.